Hello, Ken Spriggs here, starting a continuation of a build that I began in one of my how-tos. And this is for the Moebius 128 Spindrift from Land of the Giants. And I showed using the Paragraphics photo etch in a previous video in order to be able to light up the front grills and the engine. So as I said in my last video, time is kind of running out in getting ready for Wonderfest here coming up at the end of May. So I've had to refocus my attentions onto about 3 or 4 other kits that I began that I want to complete in time to take with me there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take the Borg Discovery. A lot more work going on in that, but I will continue that. So on this build, what I'm going to be doing is I come up with an idea of a retro kind of a build where I'm going to have this model kit actually being built on like a little mini desk from when I was a child. Because back in the early 70s, the Spindrift from Aurora was my very first science fiction kit that I ever got. And I fell in love with it and the little people in the interior and the other ships that were available, like the Moon Bus and the Invaders UFO and the Flying Sub. So that's what got me started in model building in the first place. And also back then I was very imaginative, so I would tear apart things to see how they worked, or take apart toys and other kits and kind of use the parts to build things with my imagination. So I'm going to kind of explore that a little bit with this diorama. In addition, I'll be building an interior for the little mini Spindrift as well. So let's go ahead and see what I have accomplished so far. All right, so I'm beginning my interior, scratch build interior for the Moebius small Spindrift from Land of the Giants. So this is the full-size one from the Polar Lights kit, just to kind of show you the detail that I'm working on here with these little patterns in the back. So these are very tricky. I thought this over quite a bit, several times, until I came up with the right plan to be able to reproduce them on a small scale. And this is the small scale right here, this tiny little piece right here. So here's the wall, and it's not curved yet like this is, but it's the general shape. And in the center there, I'm going to have this part. It's going to have the detail on it. And I've already started it. I have about half of it done. And so what I'm doing to accomplish this on such a small scale is, rather than trying to do the inset part, those odd shapes, I realized that these parts in between are just diamonds. And then half diamonds on the sides, and then a little line between them. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a very thin flat stock, and it's very thin, but it's wider, and I'm just taking an X-Acto knife and I'm cutting off a little piece, sort of like this right here. I know you probably can't see that, but I'll show you a close-up here in a minute. And then what I did was I took a pencil and I just scored some lines up and down and sideways, so they would intersect in all the points that would be the center of these little diamonds right here. And that gives me a place to position them so that they're straight. So all I do is I take one of the diamonds with my X-Acto knife, I position it, and then I use some quick setting Tamiya extra thin cement to let it set up really quickly. And then when that's done, I have a little bit of thin round stock that I'm cutting to length, and I'm putting it in these spots between. So let me get a close-up and I'll show you doing a few of those. Okay. All right, and then here's a very extreme close-up. You can see there's my finger and the X-Acto knife. So trying to give you an idea of what I'm doing here. And so it's definitely very delicate work, but so what I'm doing is I take my X-Acto knife and I cut off a little piece of this, and I just kind of judge it, You got to put your finger down on it so it doesn't go flying. There we go. Okay. All right. So you end up with something like this, with these little pieces right here. Okay, and they are very small, so my X-Acto knife is really good for handling them. What I will do is take it, just tap it on it so the point holds it in place. So you can see it has a general diamond shape. So what I do is I will position it came off there. Try the other one. Okay, there we go. So I'll position it, and I'm lining up all of the points with the lines that I drew with the pencil. So I take a little bit of quick setting Tamiya, dab it around it, and it uses capillary action to go underneath the part. And then I'll blow on it, and it'll dry in a few seconds. Okay, there we go. So you can see, so that lines up with the other ones. And then for the bottom parts, what I'll do is I will take one of these and I will line it up. Actually, I want to try to get this on the top of the point. And just kind of hold it there, half on the edge. Sorry for my hand in the way. Okay, and likewise then. So you'll see then on the top and the bottom I have it offset. Well, actually it's going over the edge a bit. Okay, all right, so once that dries, then what I can do is turn it over and just cut along the edge and snip off that point. Okay. So what we end up with is that. Okay. And it's by no means perfect, but keep in mind for the size of this and how tiny it is, once I get it painted in the kit, you're not really going to tell the imperfections of this, but it's definitely having that little pattern in the middle that's recessed. Okay, and then I need to put these little thin strips on. So all I do is a similar thing. I have a thinner stock. I just cut off a real tiny piece. And then what I do is I line it up okay, so that one actually worked the first time. Sometimes I have to go back and snip a little bit more off. So same thing. Come on, you stupid thing. Okay, and then just move it around. Okay, and I have a few seconds for it to still move even when it starts drying, so I can position it and line it up with these other ones across. So, okay, all right, so that's how that's going to generally look, and then I need some more on the top and down here and do the last part of it. And then that's going to complete this detailed section. I can go ahead and put that onto the center of the wall, and then put some things at the top and the bottom of it. So, okay, all right. All right, so to help me get the right dimensions for my scratch build interior to the Spindrift, I'm using the included cardboard interior, which is rather inaccurate, but has the general dimensions that I need. So it's helping me to do that, especially with things like these doors, to cut out the door shape and be able to draw it on there and get the right dimensions of that. But as I said, it is inaccurate. For example, you can see that this is flat on the top, but I also have the Polar Lights kit, and you can see that there's an extended part coming up the top as well. Okay, so I adjusted my part to have that extended piece on the top. Okay, but this will be very helpful in getting the general basic shapes and sizes, and then I can adapt it to be the right contours of the ship. All right. All right, so as I showed in the previous stills, I cut the door out of the cardboard interior, so I have a shape to go by. I traced it onto these pieces of styrene, and then I used a X-Acto knife to cut them out and then sand them out with some needle files. So these are ready to go ahead and get attached onto this wall piece that I did. And the reason I made those separate is because the doors have an inset. Like they're not open on the kit, as you can see right here. It's a solid door, it's closed. But it has like a wood grain pattern to it. And you're supposed to paint it brown because it's made out of wood for some strange reason on a spaceship. So what I did was I took an X-Acto knife and I just kind of scraped down. I don't know if you can see it very well. There we go. But I gave it like a scratched finish. It looks sort of like wood grain. And so that part will show behind it. That'll be the wooden door. And then likewise, I use the same thickness of styrene sheets, so when I put these on, these are going to be the same thickness. They're all going to match up. So, okay. Let me get those glued on to the back there then. All right, so I've completed my back wall with a little detail in the back. I think it turned out really well, especially for such a small detail. And it's kind of hard to see, but I have kind of a wood grain look on the doors. All right, so that's ready to go. So now I've turned my attention to the floor, which is going to be a reproduction of this. And what I want to do is I want to have the kind of this carpet looking design in the floor, because I think that's pretty cool, and it's certainly part of the kit. So what I've done is I've gotten some styrene, and this is designed to be like a stucco pattern for a house, that kind of thing. But it looks pretty cool. It has a nice rough detail. I think it looks pretty cool for that. So I've drawn out a shape that I want to cut it out. So let me go ahead and start working on that. All right, and here is the pretty much finished flooring for my interior to the Spindrift. This material is really cool. I'm glad I found this stucco material. It looks like the carpeting that you get in the actual kit, which has that rough finish, which is pretty cool. Okay, I have all of the stairs, of course, leading out, these extra sections on the cockpit. I have these little pieces of styrene, which are the guides for the walls. There's two wall sections, of course, that go up to the cockpit, and doors between them, and one piece on the end here that I'll make as well. I still have to work on getting the little circles for the seats. 6 of those. I have a few ideas I'm working on. So, okay, so I'm going to start working on the walls now to go between these compartments, the passenger, the hallway, and the cockpit. Okay.
Alright, so to get the actual dimensions of the walls, the basic shapes, so I can start cutting them out of styrene and shaping them, I took a picture of them with my iPad mini, and there they are on the iPad mini, and then it allows me to shrink or enlarge them so that they come out to be just about the right size. And what I'm basing that on is the width of this floor, because they come out and then curve out and meet kind of the edge of this stair step here. So I did that, and then I took some clear tracing paper, it's just called vellum, and I just laid it down. I had to tape it on so it wouldn't move around, and just took a mechanical pencil and just drew around it and drew the general shape and dimensions. Another thing I did, which was helpful, is I have the cardboard insert part with the door cut out, so I know the size of that. So I just set it up to the right size so it matched the door dimensions as well. So that was helpful. All right. So what I can do now is take the clear tracing paper, cut it out, and I can get the general shape, and then I can just sand it down to the right dimensions and grooves and such things like that. And this also helps me to know where to put the door. Obviously, the different controls, I just like rudimentally put them in the right places. So, all right. All right, so I reproduced the two walls, and the passenger compartment one, I completed the inside, and also the opposite side. Now I initially made a mistake, and I put the little control kind of triangular shape on this side instead of the other side. But I left it because actually that makes more sense. All the other controls are on the right side of the door versus being on the left side of the door, which this one is. So that's the only thing I left. The hallway part of the cockpit wall I completed. And I still have to complete the cockpit part, which is a little more complex. A lot going on there. So I started on that with these two little strips, and I'm working on the rest of that. So, okay. So let me go ahead and keep working on that, and then I have to do some measurements for this part. This is a little more complex, but it should come together pretty simply for the two parts that are the cockpit walls. Okay. All right, so I'm beginning to build my diorama or base for this Spindrift 1/350 scale from Land of the Giants from Moebius Models. So the idea that I'm going for is that the kit itself with my interior that I built is going to be an actual model kit that's being built by a child like myself. On a desk. So the desk is going to have the kit and maybe different parts of it and some glue materials. And I'm also going to be working on a little miniature version of the snake diorama as well, with the little figures and the safety pin, which is pretty cool. So I'll show that here a little bit later. So to start with the basic desk idea, I got a Boxo balsa which I got a great deal on from Hobby Lobby, $9.99 with my 40% off. Got it for about $6. So that was really good. And so what I'm doing is I have all the like pieces here laid out to make the general desk idea, or the basic desk structure. And then here's the kit. So that's going to be on part of it. And I'm going to have some other things here as well that are going to decorate it, so I'll show that when I'm, as I go further along. So the first thing I need to do is get these all glued together with some Elmer's glue. Let those dry overnight, and then I can get it sanded down a little bit more even, and then look to getting some stain on it and some varnish. So, okay. All right, so I let the desktop dry overnight, and then I sanded it down with some sandpaper. So I got a nice smooth finish. Looks pretty cool. It's got a few rough spots in it, but nothing major. I want this to look like a used desk and beat up. So I'm definitely going to do some damage to it once I get it stained and varnished. So what I got was some golden pecan. I wasn't looking for a certain color, but this is kind of a, your standard light brown desk wood stain. So before I do that though, I'm going to fashion some other parts to it. Like 4 legs, like cut off legs basically. I'm thinking about doing like a drawer, maybe a half a drawer, and I was thinking that I can go in and out and actually keep the battery in there, so that'll be kind of cool. I also want to work on some shelves in the back that come up, just some rudimentary ones. I'll have some little things on there as well for it. So okay, let me go ahead and continue working on that. That's coming along really nice. I really like that balsa. It really looks good and looks like real wood. All right. All right, so I got the back shelving done and glued on, and it's drying right now. It was a bit tricky to get it all balanced and put together, just like real wood, because you got some warps and different shapes that don't fit together right. So that looks pretty good. It needs a little bit of sanding and finishing some of the edges when it's dry, and I'll let that dry on there. Still debating about putting something on the back. I may or may not, depends. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to put on those shelves. Obviously some modeling supplies, maybe the boxes, things like that. So, okay. But I will go ahead and let this dry overnight. And then I'll do some more working on it before I'm ready to start staining it. All right. Alright, so as I showed from the previous stills, I just took some aluminum tubing. I'm not quite sure what the diameter of it is, but it can be bent fairly easily. It gets a bit of a kink in it. This one was one of my first tries and it was a little too large, but it's no big deal. So I just held it up against this aluminum rod for the X-Acto knife and just bent it and measured it, and then I ended up with 2 handles for my drawers, which look kind of cool. And then I just so far lightly pressed them into the balsa wood. I measured it off to center it, and then pressed it in so there'd be a little bit of an indent. Let me stick one in there and I'll show you what that's going to look like. Right, there you go. So that's going to be my door handles. Drawer handles, I'm sorry. And I'll probably just leave them aluminum once I get the drawers and the rest of the desk stained and varnished. And then I'll probably have to use some CA glue to glue them in place. Okay, but simple and basic, but it certainly gives me the idea of a handle there for the drawers. So, okay. All right, so I have both of the drawers glued together. I need to sand down the edges to make them more even, which I'll work on today. There's the front for the door handle, and they're just sitting obviously on the work table right now. I have the legs glued onto the desk, the half legs, so I could get an idea of where I wanted to put everything. So let me show you kind of the idea of how this is all going to work. Okay, here's the desk positioned upside down because I have the back that I have to hang over it. So the drawers are going to be somewhat flush up against the bottom of the desktop, and instead of trying to work on some grooves and things like that to have them fit into, I'm just going to have them basically in a box where they can just move in and out, and they're long enough so they're not going to fall out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have pieces of balsa, and this isn't the right size, but it's going to be glued in between the two legs. It's going to be centered coming down this way and down on this side and also in the back, so you won't see the drawers from the back or anything. Obviously nothing in the front, and then they're going to be high enough so that I can have, and I'm also going to have some kind of a support here in the middle, not a leg but a support, or maybe another piece of this type of balsa in between. That might actually just work fine, and that's going to be cut down so that all three of these pieces in the back are going to be the same height. They're going to be just a little higher than the drawers. And then I'm going to put two pieces of balsa, flat balsa, over top to make it a bottom support for the drawers. And so this whole part will just be enclosed, and the drawers will just pull right out from that and go back in, and they'll rest on the piece that'll be glued onto each of these supports. All right, so let me get that going, and then we're going to go ahead and start on some staining of this. All right, so I have the centerpiece glued in place and the supporting side and back pieces. So I'm going to let those dry overnight. I have this ready to go, so that's notched out. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, so that's going to go on the bottom. There's a bit of a gap on the back here, but I'll just put something in that, some more, a piece of like a square balsa wood, and that's on the back of the bottom, so you're really not going to see it. And then I've made it so that these line up on the sides. And then the space in between will be just the right size for the drawers to go into once that's glued in place. Okay, so let me let that dry overnight, and I'll get the other piece glued on there, and a little bit of sanding, and then I'll be ready to do some staining. All right, and here is my finished desk. It's dried overnight, nice and solid. I did some sanding on it, smoothed out the edges, cleaned it up quite a bit. Turned out really, really nice. The drawers as well. Right now I just have a piece of balsa wood in the back of them that I'm gluing in place so they can have a stop when they go back in. They're not going to go in too far. So I'm ready to go ahead and start staining. I'm going to use this golden pecan. I just picked one that looked kind of a light brown. I didn't have any particular one in mind, so I'm going to start staining it and let that dry, and then we'll get and put a clear coat over it, and that'll finish that up for now. I'm going to do some weathering on it and put some nicks and dings and spilt paint and glue and that kind of thing on it. So okay. All right, and I got the desk stained completely. Put a couple of coats of that on, and then I put a clear gloss coat. Decided to use that rather than varnish. It was just a little bit easier to use. So it turned out really well. Has a lot of nice variations in the wood grain and things like that. I have the drawers handles on, and so the drawers come out and they go back in, and they're flush with the front. Same with this one. All right, so that turned out really well. so what I'll be doing is doing some weathering on this. Probably do some washes, put some cuts and nicks and things like that. I already have a few nicks that happened during the building of it, which worked out well. Little paint spills, some glue spills, things like that. So, okay. All right. So let me put that aside for now, and let me start working on some of the other parts for this diorama. All right. So I'm scratch building a kind of a retro robot to go into my diorama. The reason for it is that a lot of the things I did as a kid with models were to take apart other kits or other toys and use their parts to make science fiction things I wanted, like a spaceship, things like that. So in this case, in my diorama, the robot's going to be kind of broken apart, and lights are taken out of him so they can be used to light up the engines and the grills and the Spindrift. So I'm just doing a rudimentary kind of a robot that you would have seen in the 50s. You know, some of the ideas that you're going to see, like from the Lost in Space robot with this thing right here, and it'll have some ribbing in it, things like that. So all I did was I glued together some styrene in a basic shape. This is a torso. I put some on the top and finished that off a bit, and I drilled 3 holes through with my Dremel, and that's going to be where the lights were. So in this robot, he would have had 3 lights that were blinking in his chest. So they're gonna have wires sticking out like they were torn out. Working on some arm ideas. So I took some tubes that are going to go in the sides, and I got these little half beads from Hobby Lobby, and they're kind of pearlized, but a little bit of sandpaper, and that sanded that off pretty easily. So all it is a white acrylic white plastic little half dome, which is kind of cool. So I can use those for different things. I'll probably repurpose them for these things as well and sand them down a bit and have them like hanging out, that kind of thing. So we'll see. But the torso is pretty much done for now. I'm going to start working on his bottom and some legs and arms, and then we'll work on his head as well. Okay. All right, so my little toy robot's coming along pretty cool. I have some screen glued into there and some other detail on the front. Put a couple of ribs on the back to raise it up a bit. And working on the arms. So as I showed before, I just glued on one of my half beads onto it, and I sanded off the chrome or the pearl color. I glued a piece of tube onto it that I bent a little bit, and then I have this flexible tube, but this was from like a cheap selfie stick, wire on it that I cut off and saved. Always save different parts that you get for modeling. It definitely comes out as a benefit in the end. So here it is, just slid over the tube, so it makes like a robot looking cool arm. And on the end, I'm going to glue on this little tiny disc that I just cut out of some styrene with a hole punch. All right, and then come up with some kind of a claw to put onto it. I'm thinking of having one of the arms glued on, the other arm is like broken loose with wires hanging out. Because on this particular robot, those little shoulder sockets would also glow, and you can see that does glow. It's kind of cool. I'll paint that with some kind of a clear color, clear red or blue or something. So, okay. All right. Okay, so I have my little retro robot pretty much completed. As far as the different parts, I still have some more detailing to do. So I have the torso, and I have some ragged looking parts on the right side where the right arm was ripped off, broken off. And once I get it painted, I'm going to have some wires sticking out of it, some bare wires. I also put 2 little tubes that I glued in right there, as you can see. Same thing, I kind of chewed up the ends of it like they were just kind of broken off and snapped off hastily. by a young child, myself actually. The third hole is going to have the bulb in it. That's going to light up still. I have the hole for the right arm because that's going to have a light coming through it. And then I have the neck part glued on. And I'm going to put some of the twisted cabling around that as well to give that the similar look. I have the rudimentary head created, the shape of it. I still put some features on it, like some eyes and a grill for a mouth or something, and a little nose, that kind of thing. I have two more of those little bulbs there in the top, and as you can see, I have two little pieces of styrene tubing. I'm going to 5-minute epoxy two lights up into there as well. And then I'll put it back on it, and that'll come up through this hole and come down into the torso. So altogether, the robot's going to have 4 different lights. And what I have is this pre-wired set of 4 lights. They're 4 red SMDs that all go into one connector, and they blink. They have a slow flash. Let me show you real quick here. I can do this. Hold on one second. Okay, there you go. So they flash slowly in sequence, which is really nice. So Evans Designs offers this. They can do up to 4 SMDs of different sizes, and you choose what color you want and what sizes you want, and they make them flash in sequence, which is really great to do, because if you just get flashing SMDs, they're going to get out of sequence, and so that that doesn't look the way you want it to be. So I originally got this set to use for the Spindrift, and this is their slow flash, but then they have another one which is called a breathing SMD, and it's more of a ramp up, ramp down, ramp up, ramp down. It's a little more of a slower fade, which I really wanted for the Spindrift. So I have a set of those also in the SMDs, which I'm going to use for that. So I'm going to use this for this one. And the idea is that this robot originally came with 3 blinking lights here, 1 for each arm, and then 2 on the head. And so the diorama is showing the idea that I tore this robot apart and took out some of the lights to repurpose them for the Spindrift, but there are still some lights that are there. So I'm going to have those still blinking, and I'm going to have 1 right here, 1 in the left arm, and 2 up in the head that are going to blink, and they're going to blink in unison. So that'll be pretty cool. So what I'll do is I'll just wire those through the kit, take them up through here or through a hole in the back. 1 will go here, 1 will go into the arm, 2 will go through the neck up into the head. And then they'll the power supply, it'll go down through the bottom, and this will be glued onto the desk, and I'll have a hole drilled through the desk, and the wires will go down through into the battery and the switch, into one of the drawers. So that'll be pretty cool. So if it works out the way I'm thinking, I'm going to have one of the drawers are going to have the robot, one of the drawers are going to have the Spindrift, and they're both going to have their own coin battery to power it. So, all right. So I'm just about ready to start doing some painting on this robot. And what I'm going to do, and this will be a first for me, I'm very excited about it, I'm going to use some alclads, because I haven't used this before, and I've heard a lot of good things about it, seen a lot of good videos on there and some kits that were done. So I'm going to use some aluminum, and what you do is you start with a black gloss base, and I'm hoping that this will also do some masking of the lights. I might do a test first of it just to see. If not, I may flat black coat it first and then put the gloss black on. But the way the alclads work is you have a gloss black on it and let it dry, and then you airbrush on the metallic, and together it gives it a very realistic metallic look. So I'm going to have him looking kind of like a really metallic aluminum, which is pretty cool. What I'm thinking of for the legs is I got some Tamiya metallic gray, which is also kind of a darker. It's a little closer to the color that you see for Robbie the robot. And obviously I borrowed a lot of ideas, like his legs are like Robbie, his arms are more like the robot from Lost in Space. The body has a little bit more of the robot from Lost in Space with this little grill, and I'll paint that some other color like silver and maybe some red metallic or red clear over it or something. The head, I'm kind of going a little bit towards a couple different ideas. It almost looks like a dog or even Mickey Mouse with those lights, but we'll see. I kind of wanted to pattern it a little bit after I believe his name is Marvin from the little bit of a brain freeze here. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm sorry. I'm going to give him kind of those weird looking depressed eyes on him. So we'll see. I'm still playing with it. But he's going to be kind of a hodgepodge of different robots from that era or even later ones. But he's kind of a cheap rip-off of a robot. So, all right, let me keep working on him and we'll get him going there. So he's looking pretty fantastic. Alright, so I got an initial coat of the all-clad gloss black onto the torso of the robot. And the legs, I'm not going to ultimately paint the legs with the same color, just the bottom of the torso that they're connected to. But it's no problem. If I get some on those, I can always paint over it. They're going to have another metallic as well. The arm either, but what I decided to go ahead and do is to get the lights put in, because I have to get these glued together, the head and the arm and the torso, before I can get the final aluminum on there, because I don't want to be gluing that onto the metallic paint, or that's going to mess it up. So so I have the head completed, and as I showed in my previous shots, I patterned that after Marvin the Depressed Robot from the British version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I always liked. So I think he turned out kind of cool. And I have the bulbs, the lights glued into the bulbs. I'll show you those whenever that dries. And then I glued the head onto the body. And so right now I have 5-minute epoxy drying with the bulb into the shoulder of the left arm, which will blink. And in a little tube, I glued it facing up, and that's going to be glued inside, and it's going to be, it's kind of hard to see with the black, but the left hole there is open, and there's going to be one of these little bulbs in there. And I don't know if I explained earlier in the video, but these little bulbs are real light bulbs. They I got them from Hobby Lobby. They're used with dollhouses, and they have light fixtures that you literally can screw the bulb out and screw a new one in, so they're pretty cool. So what I did was I cut away the metal from the glass part, I think it's glass, to make a little bulb, and that's what I'm using in the head and sticking out of the front. The other two spots, which again are hard to see, they're kind of chewed up, and they're going to look like the fixture for the bulb was broken out and then put into the Spindrift. So that's kind of the idea, that this robot had 3 lights on the chest, 1 on each arm, 2 in the head, and at this point the one arm is ripped off and the bulb taken out. 2 of these bulbs are ripped off, so they're repurposed for the Spindrift. So that's kind of the idea. Alright, so I'm going to let those dry, and then I will get the arm and the torso, or the legs, glued onto the little robot, so I can go ahead and get another coat of the black on the head, and then I'll mask off the parts I don't want to be painted. Alright, and there is my robot all glued together. his right arm is not going to be glued on, and I know it's hard to see detail because he's all black coated. So yes, I do have him, I guess it would be primed with the glossy black from Alclad. So I'm just going to let that dry overnight, several hours. And the arm socket there that's going to glow, that's covered with some micro mask. And so are the two bulbs at the top are covered by micro mask. The bulb in his chest is not, because that's a spare bulb and I can just remove it and put the clear one in. But other than that, he's all ready to go. Just let him dry overnight. He's all wired up. And then tomorrow we'll get the aluminum on him. I think he's going to look pretty sweet. Paint on some highlights, get his arm painted. And then he'll be ready to go. All right. All right, and here is the completed retro robot. And I've decided to call him Robert. Robert the robot, trademarked. Kind of a cheap rip-off of Robbie the robot, as it were. So I got the metallic gray on his legs. I have a dark gray for the arm, the bendy arm, and red on the claws. Sorry for the shakiness. I have the little red eyes and a little orangish yellow in the first pupils for Marvin, as he is. I have some clear red on the top bulbs and the bulb in his chest. And then, as you can see, I have some wires protruding through that are glued in out of the openings, with the idea that the light fixtures were ripped out of it to be used in the Spindrift. So, okay. And there's his spare arm that's been ripped off. I don't know if I'm going to do anything more on the inside of this, because I could just have it laying like this and glued in place, but we'll see. I may put a little bit of the plastic chipping through, but there he is on the desk. He doesn't sit flat, obviously, because of the wires. They'll be going down through the desktop into the drawer, but I think he turned out really well. Let me go ahead and put a battery on his lights, and we'll show you how that's going to look. All right, there we go. So there's the bulb in his chest that blinks, his shoulder, the bulbs on his head. All right. So he turned out really well. I'm really pleased with that. It's pretty cool. He's going to be laying there with some lights blinking on him. Okay. All right. So this build's coming along really well. Continuing to work on some other parts for the diorama, and also I want to finish up the interior for the Spindrift. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video for this week. Sorry for the lengthy one, but quite a lot accomplished. So thank you to all my new subscribers, and stay tuned, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you.